Good morning, Harbor Cove. Happy Sunday. I hope this video is finding you well. Hey, I need to get some things, out of the way before I get started. I gotta confess that this is getting really hard. I'm someone who doesn't like to feel trapped, and some days it just feels that way. You wake up and you think to yourself, what am I gonna do today? Well, the same thing I did yesterday, and the same thing that we're gonna do tomorrow. And some days it just seems so difficult to find a lot of happy in the day. And I think that's okay to say, right? I mean, it's not a knock on my family. It doesn't mean I don't like them or I don't like being around them. I love them. It's just more of a state of mind that I struggle with. Now, some days are good and fine, but others are not. And I don't know if you're with me in those feelings, but I just wanted to say up front that whatever you are feeling this morning, that's okay. And I think God wants you to be honest about where you're at, and He can work with that. So today we are back chatting about habits. And since we stopped gathering in person, we have been looking at a different habit each Sunday, not like hygiene habits, but spiritual habits. Some people call these spiritual disciplines. And one of the things that stay-at-home orders has us all doing is focusing us to really examine what drives us, what regulates us, what scares us, what inspires us. And maybe you've made a change to your daily routine for the better, or maybe you've realized the lack of discipline has led to some pretty painful realizations about yourself that you need to work through. But there is good news. No one is stuck. Because we've been saying that the small habits we develop actually make a big difference. So this morning we're going to look at another habit, solitude. Interesting choice, yeah? I mean, the government has actually told us to stay home. Don't hang out with other people. And this might be an easy habit to develop, but when I say solitude, I don't mean just being alone. The habit of solitude is actually more of a state of mind than an actual place or a condition. And if you can develop a habit of solitude, then you will find that it actually helps you feel less lonely and more compassionate towards others. So, how do you do it? How do you do solitude? Okay, check this out. One of my family's favorite shows to watch lately has been this show called Alone. It's on the History Channel and it has a few seasons to it. On the show, there are a handful of contestants that get dropped off alone in the wilderness with only a few things that they could bring along with them. And their job is to simply outlast everyone else, mentally and physically, in the wilderness alone. And the winner gets $5,000. And the first season was actually up in the Pacific Northwest on Vancouver Island. But imagine doing that. I mean, it's one thing to survive in nature, but it's another thing just to be alone with yourself for weeks. Imagine all the thinking and processing and maybe even freaking out that happens. People often say it's dangerous to be alone with your thoughts. But the guy that won season 3, his name was Zachary Fowler. He was alone for 83 days. 83 days! And when I asked about how he did it, he mentioned a few different things. First, he said to win, he knew that he didn't have to just survive in the wilderness. He had to make a home that was a safe place, that provided shelter, and and what was needed. Second, he said that he had to stick to his goals every day. Do the most important things first, like setting traps, gathering wood, all that stuff. And then third, he said he journaled. And he processed the stuff that he was doing each day. And he actually did it by carving pictures on what he called his wizard staff, which I think is cool, a cool way to journal, but he was journaling nonetheless. So make a home, review your goals, process your life. That's how he did solitude. It wasn't about surviving or running away from stuff or escaping. It was running towards a fulfilling life regardless of the circumstances and those around you. And that takes time to work on yourself. And that actually reminds me of a story about Jesus. Fun fact, Jesus actually practiced solitude quite a lot. He did it for 40 days before he started his ministry. He spent an entire night alone before he chose his disciples. He retreated to a place apart from others when he heard that his friend died. After he fed 5,000 people with just a few loaves and a few fishes, he went up into the hills by himself. After a long night of work, he got up in the morning and went out to a place alone. So as Christians, we are people that follow Jesus' life, and if he made solitude a habit for himself, maybe we should consider it too. I mentioned that before Jesus started his ministry, he actually spent 40 days in solitude. That's 40 days alone, by himself, in the wild. And during that time, the story goes that Jesus was tempted 3 times. It's in Matthew 4. It says, "Then Jesus was led by the Spirit into the wilderness to be tempted by the devil. After fasting 40 days and 40 nights, he was hungry. The tempter came to him and said, 'If you are the Son of God, tell these stones to become bread.' And Jesus answered, 'It is written that man shall not live on bread alone, but on every word that comes from the mouth of God.'" Interesting, huh? In a vulnerable moment of Jesus' time of solitude, he was offered a way out of his hunger. But that offer really wasn't helping Jesus survive. It was a temptation to get him to give up, because I don't think Satan actually wanted Jesus to start his ministry. It was a power play. He didn't want Jesus to do his thing, and if he could win him over to his side, then he would be more powerful. Now, thankfully, Jesus didn't give up, and in his solitude, he remembered where his source of strength comes from. It wasn't from the immediate fulfillment of a need, but from the eternal care of God. And he said that the word of God is so much more filling to his soul and body even, that bread can wait. And Jesus' response, he reminds me of Zachary's plan to survive at his time alone. Remember, Zachary said that the first thing he had to do was make a home. By Jesus saying, "Look, that bread might help me now, but in the long run, I need something better. I'm making my home with the one that has my best interests in heart. And I don't belong to you, I belong to God." And now I think the reason a lot of people fear solitude or give up on making their home in the strongest places is because they actually fear loneliness. And solitude makes us address our fear of being lonely. The fear of being left out is real. FOMO is real. No one wants to be the person that doesn't get checked up on or doesn't get that invite to the Zoom party. I think I share this with some of you, but a few months ago, the loneliest time I ever felt was the night before my first day of college. I just said goodbye to my family. I was all alone in my college dorm room, but my roommates were out with their friends and they weren't answering their phones. My best friend was out at his aunt's and uncle's house. My girlfriend was driving and couldn't talk. And all I wanted to do was just be with someone to take my mind off the fact that I started college the next morning. But no one was around and I was in a new place with no one. So I went to sleep. Loneliness sucks. But loneliness and solitude are different. In fact, Richard Foster wrote that the difference between them is that loneliness is where we find inner emptiness, but solitude is where we find inner fulfillment. And he writes that if we have developed the habit of solitude, whether we are alone or whether we are always around people, we carry a portable sanctuary in our heart. And that's just a fancy way of saying it's okay being alone because you know that you're never really alone when you're at home with God. And that is what solitude seeks to do, to help you find home first and foremost with God, before your friends, before your family, before your teammates. Solitude builds your home with God, and you are never alone there. So the question I have for you is, how at home do you feel with God? Do you feel safe with God? Do you feel cared for? Is God a loving parent to you? Or is he more like a confusing, crazy aunt that you never know if she's going to scold you or slip you some cough drops that she thinks is candy? But the story of Jesus in the wilderness continues. He actually gets tempted again. And this time, it happens like this. In verse 5, it says, "Then the devil took him to the holy city and had him stand on the highest point of the temple. 'If you're the Son of God,' he said, 'throw yourself down. For it is written, he will command his angels concerning you, and they will lift you up in their hands, so that you will not strike your foot against a stone.'" Have you ever been tempted to show off? Because that's the vibe that I get here with this one. Jesus knew who he was and what he had come to do, and he knew that he was a big deal. And so this time, the devil takes a different tactic. He goes after his ego. He says, "Hey, if you're really that big of a deal, let's see it," right? Now egos are dangerous. Can I tell you a time when my ego failed me? When I was applying for colleges, I knew that I had a strong chance to get into almost any school that I wanted. I had excellent grades, community service, SAT scores, etc. I applied to 2 colleges with a major in construction management. I applied for early admission to one of them that I considered to be the better, more prestigious school of the 2. But for the other school, which I thought was the lesser one for dumb people, that dumb people could get into easily, I applied for a special honors program. That if I got into that one, I wouldn't have to pay for my college education. Not to my surprise, remember ego, I got into what I thought was the better school, School A. but I had to tell them that I would attend or not before I heard from school B, the dumber one. Now, I really didn't want to pay for college. That was important. So I figured if I could get into school A, then for sure I was going to get into the honors program in school B. And so I told school A, bye Felicia, and I sat back and I waited for the acceptance letter from school B, and I debt-free college education. And then the letter came, and I bet you know where this is going. Yeah, I didn't get it. And I gotta say, I was surprised. I was really surprised. I learned a lot about humility that day. I went to school, I paid for it, and God was gracious to me and made it an actual really awesome opportunity. But yeah, egos are dangerous, sometimes even costly. So back to the temple thing where Jesus was being tempted with his ego, and he was there and he says, it is also written, do not put the Lord your God to the test. Jesus basically says, this is how it works. I have a job, and yes, it's an important one, but I am not more important than the one I serve. I trust my Father, and I want people to trust him the same way. So he remembered what his role was. And this reminds me of Zachary's second tip for solitude. When alone, work towards your goals. He spent every day gathering wood and setting traps and retrieving food, and he knew that if he didn't stick to the plan, then things would end way different than he hoped. Jesus' goal was to honor God and not put him to the test. And he avoided the second temptation, and he stuck to the plan. By working towards your goals, you can keep your ego at bay. Your ego creeps in and says, you've done enough. You're a rock star. You deserve to just stop and celebrate how far you've come and relax. You don't have to work that hard anymore. I mean, remember the rabbit from the tortoise and the hare story? The rabbit could have destroyed the turtle. The turtle really had no chance if he was racing someone more disciplined in an opponent. Slow and steady doesn't win the race, but arrogance certainly loses it. Arrogance is that little voice in your head that says, I don't need that, when you really do. It says, I got this, when you really don't. It says, I don't need help, when you really do. So what goal are you working towards? How will you work towards that each day? How do you need help? How will your ego get in the way? Guess what? Jesus ain't done being tempted in his solitude. He has one more to go. Verse 8 says, again, the devil took him to a very high mountain and showed him all the kingdoms of the world and their splendor. All this I give to you, he said, if you will just bow down and worship me. Okay, so with this one, the devil just throws out all ambiguity and just gets to the point. He says, look, change teams and I'll give this all. I'll give this all to you. Now, this one might seem like the easiest to see for what it is, but that doesn't mean it's any less dangerous. Jesus is being tempted with a lot of power here. And where maybe at one point he was stronger to resist that kind of temptation, after 40 days of solitude and submission to God, having your own authority might sound pretty good. Imagine after 40 days of our stay-at-home orders, Governor Inslee comes to you and says, hey, Washington is all yours. But we're still having, coronavirus threats. But if you just bow down and worship me and make me, your king or whatever, I will let you do whatever you want with the state. You want sports back? Boom, you have the power. You want to see your friends again? Boom, again, you have the power. You want to go to places again? You guys, do you remember places? They're these things that we go to. You can do that. See, that's tempting, isn't it? But Jesus doesn't give in here either, because he knows how far he's come and is about to see this all through. In verse 10, Jesus said to him, away from me, Satan, for it is written, worship the Lord your God and serve him only. Thankfully, Jesus didn't give in to this last temptation either. And for the third time, he actually replies to the devil with this phrase. He says, it is written. Now, Jesus relied on scripture all three times to fight off temptation. And that reminds me of Zachary's third tip for surviving alone. He wrote things down. Well, he carved things down. He carved about how he'd come so far and how all the stories that he had to tell. And imagine the huge role that this played in his survival. Imagine the time when he was tempted to give up because the traps weren't working. But he saw his notes and he realized that he caught that fish that one time. The moral of the story here is that the things that have been written in the Bible are quite helpful in moments of solitude. Because ultimately, like Jesus in solitude, you work through all the lies that you're being told, and you separate truth from fiction, not just about who you are, but about who other people are. And processing during solitude makes you learn how to listen before you speak, helps you learn how to understand before you make judgments. So that's just a little bit about what solitude is. Notice I didn't say solitude is just getting away and tuning out. Solitude isn't about, it is about getting away, but it's more plugging in to God and working on yourself and listening to what God has for you. So here are some steps that Richard Foster suggests that we take. And maybe you want to try them out. Some you can do now, some you can do later. But solitude starts with silence. So take advantage of the little moments of silence built in throughout your day. When you're by yourself, when nothing is on and no one's around, try to just practice being still and quiet. Or number 2, find or develop a quiet place that you can retreat to. I know that might be harder now, but if you can get outside, make a place specific for that purpose of retreating. I even heard of one family that has a chair in their house, and that's the don't bother me chair. And anyone that is sitting in that chair, everyone else knows that they're not to be bothered. Right? The idea is you are practicing removing yourself from noise so that you can process stuff. Or maybe here's an idea. Discipline yourself to speak less. And when you do speak, choose your words wisely. Don't say unnecessary stuff. And when you speak, let it always be encouraging to others. Or how about this idea? Spend an entire day without speaking. Not as a have to, but more of as an experiment, right? Try to find other ways to relate and communicate with others. Or this one, 4 times a year, maybe plan to withdraw for about 3 or 4 hours to reorient your goals, because they can shift and they can skew if they're not maintained. Or this one, 1 time a year, spend a whole day alone just to be present with God. I'll finish up with this. Richard Foster writes that the fruit of solitude is actually increased sensitivity and compassion for others. That what actually makes us an outward habit because it has an effect on how we treat others. He says that there is new freedom to be with new people. There is a new attentiveness to their needs, a new responsiveness to their hurts. He says that solitude can teach you to love your brother or sister for what they are, for who they are, not what they say. So I hope in your small groups this week you have some good times to process all this a little bit more. But until then, take advantage of this time at home to develop the habit of solitude. I love you and I miss you, and one day we will be together again. Stay home, stay healthy. Peace.